Hello everybody, and thanks for joining me for this presentation. My name is Alberto Mardegan, and let me just quickly address you in Russian, a couple of words. Я тоже могу говорить по-русски, но мой уровень знания языка мне не позволяет просто говорить об этих темах.
I can speak some Russian, but I will prefer English because my Russian is not yet fluent. But if you would like, you can communicate later with me in Russian.
My presentation is about Ubports. It's a kind of ugly name, we all recognize it. It stands for Ubuntu ports. I will tell you a bit later about the history, and it's about Ubuntu for phones. I guess you all know Ubuntu. Some of you might know that a few years ago, Canonical had a project where it was building Ubuntu for phones and tablets, and then it was cancelled. But this presentation is to tell you that this project is still living, thanks to the community. As I said, my name is Alberto Mardegan. I currently work in Luxoft. But this presentation, this project, is not related to my current employment. It's mostly related to my previous one in Canonical, and even before that in Nokia. A bit of history about Linux-based phones. This slide is not complete. I know there are other projects, probably older than Maemo even, but these are those that I believe have been most successful, kind of. It started Nokia with Maemo, then it became MeeGo, with a joint effort with Intel, and it was like really fully Linux-based operating system, a self-made distribution by Nokia. Then, unfortunately, also this project got cancelled, and it was continued or revived under the name of Tizen by Intel and Samsung. I believe that nowadays only Samsung is actually working on that. And then I guess the arrows cannot be seen, but there were some arrow from here to here and from MeeGo to MER. This is MER, this thing here. And this MER project started at the time of Maemo. It was like the fully community-driven version of Maemo. And then when Nokia switched to MeeGo, it started following MeeGo. And when finally Nokia abandoned MeeGo, the Yolla company, which you might have heard about in Russia, because I know that its phones are actually sold here, developed the Sailfish OS on top of MER. And this project is still going on, as well as Tizen. Android, yeah, I guess there is no need to present it. I also know that there are different kind of forks or variants built on top of Android. But I want to talk to you mostly about Ubuntu. So Ubuntu has a very long history. I think it started 2003 actually, but here it's a bit grayed out because it's only about, I think, 2012, 2013 that Canonical started putting some effort on the mobile projects. So this Ubuntu Touch means Ubuntu for phones. It has gone through different names. And then at a certain point, when the operating system for the phones was actually released, some people from the community started porting it to different devices that were not officially supported by Canonical. And this project got the name of Ubports, Ubuntu ports. And when Canonical in April 2017 stopped the project, these Ubports still continued to live. Okay, what is Ubports? If you're familiar with Ubuntu, it will be mostly familiar with for you because the technologies that we use are pretty much the same that you might be using in Ubuntu. There are a few differences, like the Mir display server, even though we are migrating to Wayland. There is Hybris, libhybris. It's a library that allows to use the Android system stack and drivers in a Linux-based system. And then what else? Yeah, there are a few components here in the middleware that were developed only for the Ubuntu phones, like location service, content hub. I will mention these things a bit later, but for the rest, you see there is a Qt, QML. You can use Qt widgets or QML to write applications. You can write HTML applications. GTK plus SDL also works. In the middleware, you might recognize telepathy, maybe Pulse Audio, BlueZ for Bluetooth, EDS for PIM, Ophono for phone, for the cellular network. And what is the thing that made where Canonical was pointing to differentiate, to stand out against the competition? It was convergence. You can think of convergence as being able to run the same operating system across different devices, from a phone, from a tablet, from a normal desktop, or even a TV. We had a prototype running on a TV as well. But what I find more interesting is to think of convergence as actually having a single physical device, like your phone, for example, and be able to use it in connection with external peripherals in a way that it will adapt its user interface and the way that you use it. Here in this screenshot, you see that the phone is docked into a keyboard, and most likely there is also a mouse next to it. And it's redirecting its display into a normal screen. And you see that here you have actually a windowed interface. I have some devices here with me. You're very welcome to ask me later to show you to them. I didn't want to make a live demo because I'm afraid it would be a failure as always. But you should definitely look into YouTube to search for Ubuntu for phones, Convergence, these kind of keywords, and you will find lots and lots of demos where people have been running an Ubuntu phone on an external screen. It can be connected via wire. It can be with, how is it called? There is a way to send the video through Wi-Fi. It's not Chromecast, something similar. You can run it with like docked like this, or with Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. And as soon as you, the nice thing in these demos is that you see that as soon as you enable the mouse and the keyboard and the external screen, you see that the interfaces changes from full window mode into windowed mode. And also, of course, this poses some requirements on the user interface, on the UI toolkit. Of course, you are free to use whatever your UI toolkit you like, of those that I mentioned before. But the official one, let's call it like that, it is actually an adaptive user interface. I'm afraid that here you cannot read much, but like in phone mode, you would just use a single column, but then as the size of the window grows laterally, like more subpages can appear in the view, and this is entirely configurable, of course, by the application author, but it's also very simple, so the developer doesn't need to think too much about that. If it uses the right components, this would happen almost automatically. On tablets, it looks like this. The windowing system captures all the gestures done with 3 or more fingers, while 2 or less fingers events are delivered to the application. And this one allows us to do some nice fancy stuff, let's say. So we had a sideshow here. By dragging an application window with 3 fingers, you can put it to the side stage. It's the name, side stage. And this is very convenient for typical phone applications. Like here you can see Telegram. You can think like Twitter, it's feed-based, so it fits here very nicely. You can look at Twitter and watch a YouTube video in the meantime. And by the way, this is our, I think, bi-weekly Q&A with the Ubport guys. Yeah, we all look a bit bluish, but that's because we work very hard, I guess. And our shell windowing system is called Unity 8. It's based on QML. It actually uses the same UI toolkit that we deliver for applications, and it is scalable. Scalable means many things in the sense that it scales according to the screen size, but it also scales across different devices. So actually, Unity 8 also runs on desktop machines. And recently, some people from the community have ported it to be not only a Ubuntu-specific software, but also it can run on other distributions, I think Arc OS, at least. Then another thing, another feature that I liked about the Ubuntu phones is that we started right away supporting dual SIM. I remember from my Nokia days that this was something that we always look at with terror, because we knew that sooner or later we had to support that, but we never actually were able to do that in Nokia. I don't know why, maybe it was managerial fear of getting things wrong, but we managed to get it working from day one, and I think that the user interface is also rather clean. So here you can see this is the indicator panel that you can drag from the top of the screen. This is the cellular and the network indicator. So you see the SIMs here. I don't know if it can be seen, but here you have Wi-Fi, you have the hotspot and other network related stuff. But the nice thing is that the SIM, the cellular part is, I think it's very easy to understand. You have 2 SIMs. It shows you the name of the SIM and the operator currently using. It shows you if you are roaming, and also if there is another indicator when you're using mobile data. You can set from the system settings what is your preferred SIM to use, or in every application that uses the SIM, like the call interface, the messaging interface, you have this selector where you can choose which operator. You can configure it to ask every time, but I guess most of the time you really want to set a default. But in any case, it's very easy to know what you're using to avoid doing tragical mistakes. This is just a curiosity. So these phones, they're always based on Android, on the Android kernel. We take Android phones and then we flash our operating system and we reuse the Android kernel. Why we do that? Well, because simply the device vendors don't make drivers for Linux. They only do them for Android most of the times. So it's just more practical to take the Android kernel. They ship it with the source code. Maybe they don't ship all the code for the binary drivers, but as long as you stick to the same version of the Android kernel, you can recompile the source that they give you and add and configure it so that it works with the Ubuntu. And initially, when the project started, we had the Android kernel, and then the Android kernel would boot into the Android standard system, and from there we were running a container with the Ubuntu, standard Ubuntu. But sometime later we decided to go to a more radical and probably even cleaner approach, that from the Android kernel we actually immediately boot into Ubuntu, the real standard Ubuntu that you know what, with Upstart or Systemd in the future, and all the Ubuntu services. And very early on, when in the RAMFS, init RAMFS of Ubuntu, we start a container which runs all the services that are needed to set up the Android drivers. So we use the Android drivers and really the most, let's say, hardware-related Android services inside the container. So the operating system that you see from the terminal or from your application is just Ubuntu. You don't know that it's Android. It's possible to know, of course, but it's not needed. And another reason why I believe that these Ubports is different from other operating systems is that it has a very strong security model. By default, all applications are confined by AppArmor. AppArmor is a security framework like Linux. Maybe Linux is more popular, but I believe that AppArmor is much easier to use and it offers the same functionalities. So when people develop applications, they prepare a manifest file, which is a JSON file where they declare what are the resources that their application needs. And then, of course, these resources translate to some confinement rules for AppArmor. But the nice thing is that the user, when he installs the application, is not presented with a long list of permissions and say, do you want to grant the application the list to use calendar contacts and so on? Like, nothing is asked, actually. The application goes through a very minimal vetting in the application store when it is submitted. And then when you run the application, when it needs to do something that might be dangerous or privacy sensitive, then only at that point the user is being asked what he wants to do. For instance, if you need to use contacts, you will get a prompt where you can choose from which application you want to import contacts and which contacts you want to import. For the location, of course, it's done at runtime. And for the camera and microphone as well, you get a prompt when it's needed. And then applications don't see each other, so the confinement is very strict. They don't know which other applications are installed on the system, and of course they don't see the data that other applications are using. So we have this service that is called Content Hub. I think I have a slide about it, yes. So for instance, if you want to share a photo from the gallery, so this one is the gallery. I have a beautiful photo here. I click the share button, and when this is clicked, the Content Hub comes into place, and this is its window. It knows that you are about to share a photo, so it shows you what are the applications that can share a photo for you. So here I pick the Flickr uploader, for instance. It's an application, and it will see only this image, or only the images that you have selected here if you select multiple of them, and then you can publish them. So the sharing application, this one, will not see all the photos that you have in your gallery. Also, we are very aggressive with power management. So when an application is not running on the foreground, it's stopped with the Unix signal sigstop. And if you need to perform long-running operations like playing a list of songs, we have dedicated services that can be used, or also like to download big files. You can talk to the download manager service. The file download will start. You can even close your application and it will get the file when it's done. And thanks for that, of course, we get a rather good battery life. Applications are delivered via the click packaging format. It's very similar to the package in its binary form, but it doesn't have triggers or scripts inside it. So it's very secure. It's just data that you download. And then you don't have dependencies. You just depend on a single framework. So you can say that I'm developing for this version of Ubuntu, of Ubports, you can call it the way you want, and that's it. That's your dependency. If you need other things, they need to be part in your click package. Okay, something new that we did in Ubports is clickable. It's a command line tool, Docker-based, to build applications from your machine. It's very simple and fast to use. It's like an SDK, you can see it that way. So unfortunately on April 7th last year, Canonical canceled the project. And of course all these features that we had, that Canonical had, stopped being maintained because they were very specific to the phone. Like Unity 8, Oxide is the engine used by the web browser, the click packaging format, the application store. A few months later it disappeared. A push server that we had to send push notifications also stopped working. So we were left to work on these things by ourselves. As I said, Ubports was born as a project to port Ubuntu Touch to different phones. It is actually quite successful. It works at least on the Fairphone 2, OnePlus One, plus the devices that were already supported by Canonical. And of course there are more devices that are being worked on by the community members. And so Ubports is actually taking over the Ubuntu Touch project since April. We have released 4 OTAs, like over-the-air updates. We have set up continuous integration with Jenkins. We have our application store. We have a graphical installer. I think I have slides about these things, so you can see this is our Jenkins instance. We have all our system components are in GitHub. And automatically when we commit something, it goes in Jenkins, tries to build it, it runs the tests, and then it automatically lands into the image of the next day, I mean the development image. If you are on a stable channel, then you would get updates only when the Ubport steering committee decides that it's time to make a release. The open store is there. And the nice thing about the open store is that it's actually open source. So if you don't like the policies of the open store, if you want to make one that is even more open, that allows every kind of application, even the most dangerous one, you can take the source code of the open store, you can modify it and run it locally on your server. But this one is the one that is installed by default, that is accessible by default on the Ubport devices. We have normal applications, we have, I don't see any of them, but we have web applications and other kind of packages here. We have a graphical installer that's very, very simple to use. It tries to detect what device you have connected via USB, and the flashing operation is very simple. You can choose which channel you want to follow, if the stable channel, development channel, but not many options. It's really easy. Of course, it requires that your device is actually supported by Ubports. Ubports has set up a foundation. I think it's not yet officially registered, but it's just a matter of weeks, I believe. And this foundation is, of course, no profit, and it takes care of promotion of Ubports, handling donations, and thanks for these donations, we are able to employ a developer full-time and 2 spare-time developers. Donations that are coming from some of our sponsors. We have like some companies sponsoring us, plus many donations from the community. About the community, in my opinion, it's rather big for a project of this type, because it's very for very technical users. I believe at this stage it works, but it's nice to see that we have 200 stars in GitHub. It's not a metric, I know, but it's I guess it gives an idea of how many people are following and contributing. About 1,000 of bugs filed. 60% of them fixed. And then we have a Telegram group that is very, very active. I actually don't follow it anymore because it's just a lot of traffic. We have forums with about 2,000 people, like people that are actually rather active. Then if you look at the total number, there are many more than that, but I guess some accounts are dead or not that active. So the new things that we did since Canonical abandoned the project are actually quite a lot. If you think that we are just a few developers, like I would say about no more than 10, I would say, developers working on this in their spare time, moreover. So we rebased the operating system on Xenial. Xenial is Ubuntu 16.04. Because before it was using an older version, and it's hard for me to overestimate the importance of this and the amount of work that went into this. It's really like a lot of things that changed and that we had to update. And luckily we managed to do that without having a lot of regressions. So yeah, we have, I mentioned before, the clickable tool for application development. Excuse me. Due to the update to Xenial, we got a better power saving, as well as I not mentioned it, but a Bluetooth support. We have Libertine. It's it's a project to run actually desktop applications, real like Firefox, that are not Ubuntu specific at all, in a container in Ubports. Of course, it requires that your phone or your device is rather capable, like CPU-wise and RAM-wise, but it's there, it works. When we abandoned the Oxide web engine, we moved to Qt web engine. This is also being a lot of effort to do. If you're familiar with Qt, you might know these Qt quick controls. It's now possible to use to develop applications with a native style using Qt quick controls. We updated to the, well, it's not the latest Qt, but I think it's the latest stable version of Qt as I'm speaking. So this made Unity 8, the shell, and also all applications considerably faster, especially startup times. We can write applications using Python via this tool. We have a lot of QA, no, we have one QA script for testing, but it can be used in many ways. So it's easy for people who are interested and are not developers, but want still to contribute to help us with bug reporting and testing stuff. We have new keyboard layouts. People have contributed sounds, wallpapers. Unbox is another interesting project. It's still under development, but it's getting very close. It's to run Android applications in Ubports. Just a screenshot from the translation site. We are in a very good position with translations. It's very easy to contribute translations. This is the roadmap. The first one is already out. So we have plans for bug fix releases, updates, and many things. Okay, so for people who want to help, of course, we have a project to port a new device. This is based on Halium. This is a new project. QA, documentation, translations, just talking about Ubports, and of course, write application is a very nice thing to contribute, and I think that's all. So head to the forums if you got questions. You can talk to me directly. I have a blog in English, Italian, and one in Russian. You can write me. You can write me on Twitter. It's mostly pro-Kremlin propaganda, but it's still interesting. You can use Mastodon, any diaspora, whatever services. I'm everywhere, and that's all.
The first question.
Thank you for your talk. So actually I have two short questions. The first one, could you share your idea about the future? Is it one more ecosystem in this world, or it could be somehow integrated, could I in the future run Android applications there or something like this? This is first question, what the main idea. And second question is, if I am a developer, how easy to set up all environment and start building applications or even changing the platform? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, very good ones. So the first one, about the ecosystem, Canonical didn't want to support Android applications because they thought that if we support Android, no one will write applications for us. So we will not be able to differentiate. Of course, now we are a community project. The goal is to support as many people as possible. We don't have a plan to be the only ones. So we support Android applications. Our hope is that we still have our native applications that would be more secure because they are more confined. So yeah, the goal is actually to have an ecosystem. That's the goal. It's very easy to write applications and contribute and also modify the system. First of all, it's all open source. It's like apart from the binary bits that are coming from the hardware vendors that we cannot do anything about that. But all the rest is open source, also the user interface. So with writing applications, if you're familiar, especially if you're familiar with Qt, it's very, very easy. You just write in your own editor of choice, and then you have this clickable thing, and it runs like Qmake, make, install. You can use CMake or other build systems if you want. It's very smart. If you want to contribute to the system software, there is also a container-based solution. So you don't have to install like SDK or anything. You just download the script from GitHub, and it sets up a container which downloads the SDK inside the container. It downloads the source code you have already downloaded with your changes, but it builds the changes in the container, and it's fast because it's incremental. So if you do a change, it doesn't rebuild everything from scratch. It just runs make inside the container. And both that and the clickable one, they're smart because if you have a device connected, it automatically uploads the applications or the package that you built on the device, and it's installed there. You don't have to play to do anything about that.
Thank you.
Hey fellow Ubuntu lovers, nice to meet you all. Ubuntu Phone was one of the most impressive experiences for me. I used Ubuntu Phone for about 2 years as my main phone, but now it became too slow, so I can't use it anymore. Ubuntu for phones invented several cool concepts like side screen gestures, which is used on 2 major mobile platforms currently. But I have 2 questions. The first question is about hardware. Is there a chance that someday we will be able to buy a device based on open hardware? I can live with incomplete and buggy software. I want to write apps for good mobile platform, but I need a good reason for that, and open hardware is a good reason. The second question is about software. Do we have some roadmap? From my point of view, we definitely need several applications. First of all, we need a terminal, because it's a good terminal. I know that Ubuntu for phones have terminal, but it's impossible to use that app for I tried to use it to manage my servers, but it's useless. The second app is rock solid and fast and reliable and most important full feature Telegram client. We need a messaging app for day-by-day usage. The third app is.
You said two.
What?
You said two questions. No, I'm joking. You can ask.
It's a second question about the software. It's just a list. Third app is map with GPS. By the way, I still see the same location on my device from the moment when I bought it. If you know how to fix it, please ping me at coffee break. And the last one, but the most important, we need a fast web browser. It will solve most of the other problems with software because there are a lot of web apps, but current browser is too slow compared with Galaxy S or iPhone. Thank you. So 2 questions, hardware and software.
Yeah, so about hardware, I'm not sure if the Fairphone 2 is open hardware. It might be. If it's not, then there is another project that's going on. It's the Libre M5 that they are developing. I think that's open hardware phone. They don't intend to ship it natively with the Ubports, but they will ship it with GNOME and KDE, and we are in touch with them to also have an option to have to be able to install Ubports on that. About software, yeah, the terminal, for my needs, it's fine. Then, of course, it depends. Also, the terminal is one of those adaptive applications. If you use it on a large screen, it actually has tabs, so it's a bit slightly more advanced. But yeah, it all depends on the manpower, you understand. It's QML, written in QML, so it's a rather easy thing to contribute to if I'm trying to hint that you might want to help on that. And then you asked about Telegram. Yeah, I know, for instance, Telegram. The Telegram client that we have doesn't work here in Russia because it's not smart enough to evade the provider block. We are updating it. That's the good news. It didn't support, I think, video and other stuff. We're now trying to get a new version out based on a newer version of the backend of the core library. So hopefully things will get better. We have a Matrix client, I believe. And what was the last question? GPS. I don't know, it seems to be working. We don't have many complaints anymore about that. Of course, yeah, it might depend on on the phone that you use. Also the browser, it's rather fast in the phone that I have. It's the Meizu Pro 5. It's still like 2 years old, but it's quite strong. I think I saw Aquarius, was it Aquarius BQ? Sorry? M. Okay, yeah. That's still a very low-end phone. It has 1 GB of RAM. Now I think it's too late. eBay, I'm afraid.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Because we have already eaten our coffee break. Or should I say drinking our coffee break?
Can someone bring
consuming
some coffee
our
here?
coffee break, please. Your question?
Здравствуйте. Вот такой вопрос по маркетингу.
Good day. There is a question about
Насколько secure
the
его вообще использовать?
market.
То есть,
How
есть там,
secure is this platform?
по сути, любой разработчик
Any
может
developer
внедрить и
can
что-то украсть,
implement
какие-то
something or
данные.
steal something
То
from
есть
that,
там есть какая-то
any
модерация,
data.
может.
Is there a moderation from the point of
So
view of
it was
security?
about the possibly non-secure market. Is there any moderation which prevents some malware or something like this? Pre-moderation, no?
Yes, because the The applications have a manifest file, and they declare what resources they want to use. Some resources are whitelisted in the software store. When you upload your package to the store, if it only uses these ones, it's safe. There is no manual moderation at all. If it uses some, if it declares to be using some resources that can be potentially abused, then it has to be manually vetted by the moderator of the store. So that's the way of...
It's good answer, a short one and clear.
Really short question. I use it Maemo operating system on N900 phone, and I use it tablet BQ10 Aquarius, and I very much like it. Maemo, it's the best phone operating system in the world, but not really like Ubports or Ubuntu phone. It's not so good. And my question is, which of open source projects is have a chance to be a new Maemo, and in which I could participate?
Well, this one, of course. Why do you ask me?
Cool, thank you once again for your answers and for your great talk. And whom are you going to hand a t-shirt? Just a moment, I'll give it to you, and you will decide. Maybe it will be easier to decide when you will have it in your hands.
Yeah, of course.
S size? Let's try to find something larger. M. Okay, L or M? Maybe S?
I will give you to the guy who gave the last question, because I feel a bit guilty that I didn't answer properly, but unfortunately it's hard to give an answer to such a question. It's really difficult.
Okay. A little bit of coffee and a little bit of blinds, I think. Whom should I hand it to? People, do you think coffee or blinds should go to the person with 2 questions which were half an hour length? Coffee or blinds? Blinds! Cool! That's for you! And what...